If you understand how to use control wards properly, you will be able to snowball your games a lot easier, prevent you from throwing games that are already won, or it's going to make it easier for you to come back in games that are slightly tough. And the truth is that 99% of players have no clue how to use these control wards properly, and I know this because I see this on a daily basis in my coaching sessions. If you do understand this, you will be able to snowball your lead a whole lot better, you'll prevent random deaths, and you will stop wasting gold and hit your spikes earlier and only spend it on the times when you actually need to spend it. And the truth is, if you understand this, you will win more games and it will instantly translate because it's just a knowledge check. So in this video, I'll cover when and if you should buy control wards, where to place the control wards. I'm going to give you some practical in-game examples, and I'm also going to show you some control ward mistakes that 99% of players actually make. So should you actually buy control wards? This is a bit of a hot topic in the League community, and there's some people that are really passionate about it. There's claiming that you waste too much gold and you're not hitting your spikes, and they're making all these calculations. And they have a really good point. But there's also the other people that say, yeah, but control wards are insanely useful. How OP is vision? And both sides have a really good argument. So what we're going to need to understand is the value of the gold versus the value of the vision. So we need to start very high level. The purpose of a control ward is to either translate pressure or map control. You use the vision, you block off enemy vision, and it's an insanely oppressive ward because the enemies have a really hard time clearing it if you can contest it. It can also be used as a bit of gank or roam defense. The vision can be used to prevent enemies from making plays onto you. Now, in an ideal world, you use both of these instances together, so you have max value from your control ward. The downside is that it does cost a little bit of gold, actually quite a bit of gold, and it definitely delays your spikes. On average, right, if you buy a lot of control wards, you usually buy 3 to 4 per game. Now, we're talking that's 300 gold, that's a full kill. Plus, we're donating 30 gold to the enemy team, which is also quite a bit, you know? So it's a 100 gold difference per control ward. You have to keep that in mind. It's not cheap, it's not free. So you need to have a solid control ward framework to understand when to buy it versus when not to buy it. And this is exactly what I use. And I discussed it with the other coaches in the MLA, and they think the same. So, can I control the lane? Is the first question I ask myself, like, every single time. If the answer to that question is yes, aka, do I win the trades? Do I win the control over the waves? Then I'm going to buy a control ward. And what am I going to use it for? I'm going to use it to translate the pressure and the control that I have in the lane towards different parts of the map, either towards bot, towards top, towards jungle, depending on where I want to translate my lead towards and what my win condition is. But the interesting thing is, if the answer to that question is no, most of the time I'm not buying a control ward. And this is where I see a lot of people go wrong, that they buy wards when behind, and then you get this discussion, yeah, you're now wasting gold, and you're already down spikes, so how are you ever going to get back into a position of controlling the lane? So what does this really move towards, right? It's towards that control wards are mainly a translating of lead tool, and it's one of the best tools in the game to translate your lead through because it blocks off enemy vision, and it gives you the ability to have closer vision towards one side, and then place your yellow ward a lot deeper, spotting out the enemy jungle in their tracks, seeing enemy movement, and therefore making it so much easier for you to gather information and make the correct play, because League of Legends at its highest level is of course an information gathering game. So the reason why it's good to buy control ward from head is because you can, number one, contest it. If the enemies fight for it, you win, so you can control the control ward and that area around it. Plus, what you can do is you can translate your lead because you deny the enemy's vision. You can get deeper vision setup with your other wards without being vulnerable, push up deep, buy more tempo, and therefore increase your roam timers. But from behind, it's really bad because you simply can't contest your control ward. You're going to lose a lot of gold, and it's going to be literally a gold transfer for the enemy team. If you want to lose fast, buying control wards from behind is generally the way to go for. So the only time that you want to buy control wards from behind is if you have defensive placement, so the enemies have a harder time finding it or contesting it or breaking it without investing too much tempo. And I'd mainly only do that versus really high threat champs, and you can't really get a lot of support from your own support, because most of the time you're fine not buying a control ward and then hitting your spikes as soon as possible so you can start matching the enemy laner again. But there's going to be some times where you're going to be playing versus Spike, versus Zoe, Zed jungle, and you have a Sona on bot that can't even enter the bot side river, right? Or even your bot side jungle, she's going to die. In those type of situations, it's fine for you to place a very defensive pink to get a little bit of vision. But otherwise, don't buy it from behind. So when we buy a control ward, where should we actually place it? Well, since control wards are a translation of leads tool, what I like to do as a mid laner is I like to place my control wards close towards me in the side lane bush. This is going to give me defense, of course. If you place it right here, you see the entrance on bot. And you can then complement it with a deeper yellow ward, spotting enemy jungle tracks, spotting them out really early, which is going to allow you to push really deep, contest waves really deep. You're going to get perma prio, pin the enemy under turret, and whenever you want, you can just make a play into bot. Why? Because this line, this bridge line here, is completely lit up. You have full information of enemy rotations. You even can see your own mid laner running away if you want. So you can see support roams, jungles. You're never under threat, which is going to allow you to heavily lean on bot side. Be completely safe to all ganks and put up a lot of pressure by taking waves deep and therefore buying yourself more times to roam. So this is my favorite type of control ward. I always put it in the side lane bushes because it's just so oppressive. If you nuke a wave and then move in here, the enemies have no idea what you're doing. You could be roaming bot, you could be sitting in the bush, you could be setting up a trap, and that not only puts a lot of pressure on your laner, it puts an immense amount of pressure on the enemy bot lane. You, by getting prio, deep prio on mid, can get full control of a side lane by just the threat of being in the fog of war. That's why fogging is so incredibly good as a mid laner. They don't know what you're doing, and it puts pressure on the side. Now, if you're, of course, red side, you can then place a control ward right here with a yellow ward right there, and it's on the other side as well. Now, to which side do we actually place our control wards? It's usually the side that our jungle is going to be clearing towards, or where the next neutral objective is, because that way we can actually defend it. If the enemy jungle comes or support comes to try to take our control ward, we can then defend our control ward because we have our team on our side, and that is the side of the map where we want to be translating our leads towards. The best thing for me to do is by showcasing it towards you guys in the practical in-game examples. The final thing I want to note is if you're behind, where would I place my control wards then? I would place it in a bit more defensive manner. So if I'm blue side, I would place it in the banana bush, or I would place it in this bush right here. Or if you're really getting choked out, you could even place it in there. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. You could also do an offensive control ward where you place it so deep and you pray to God that the enemies don't run over it. You can do it if you get one wave of tempo, but it's not really something that I do all that often. I also don't really place a lot of defensive control wards. I just mainly use it to translate my leads. 95% of my control ward purchases are going to be like this, and it's just insane the amount of pressure that you're going to be having on the map. So in this first example, we're going to be taking a look at a game that I played, Ahri versus Zoe. We got to ask ourselves the question, can we control the lane? In this case, Zoe is a really strong trader. She is first on the wave, and she's a little bit stronger than me in the items. So the answer to that question is no. So should we buy a control ward? Well, if you say yes, then you're gifting the enemies 30 gold right here. Because this is definitely not an angle to buy a control ward into, because I simply have no control in the lane. Zoe is way stronger, can pin me under the turret whenever she wants. I don't win a single trade into her. And that means that if I buy a control ward right now, it's going to be free gold delivery towards the Zoe. So this is not a time to buy a control ward. So the second clip, we're going to be playing Syndra versus Yone. Now, there's a few things to identify. Number one, can we get lane control? Yes, we can get lane control. So that's why I bought a control ward, and I'm now going to place it. So which side of the map am I actually going to place it on? Well, in this case, the next objective is going to be bot side. My Rengar is bot side, and my bot is currently winning. So I want to be placing my control ward towards the bot side, where I want to be translating my vision towards. Because I can then get a full push into full vision control, into full skirmishing potential on the bot side. So what I'm going to do is, after pushing out the wave and forcing Yone to respond, I get myself a control ward. I deny his vision, which is insanely strong. He's now permanently under pressure. And this is going to allow me to put so much pressure up in the lane right here, where I can just keep perma pushing. I'm never under any kind of gank threat because I'm leaning towards the bot side of the map. Therefore, I'm always kind of safe. I can just nuke the wave without being in a position of threat, and I just use my E defensively, get a full push, and they can't make a single play onto me. Why? Because it's impossible for Thresh to gank me through here. And this is going to allow me to get full control. I can have offensive ability usage, push out the wave states, play on the dragon, and I'm in full control of the map, and I can't lose it because the enemies cannot contest the control ward. Why? Because they have no vision there. It's impossible for them to move in when I'm beating Yone, and my team is already playing bot side. So we're putting a chokehold literally on their neck, and it's unable for them to get out. That's the idea of this control ward. That's the power of these wards. So in this next instance, I'm going to be playing Aurora versus Annie. We're even. Annie is strong. But I've got a slight wave clear advantage with my QE, while Annie is not that good of a wave clear, so I'm confident buying a control ward and placing up into bot side. Now I place my nice little deep vision, And what you'll find is that Annie in this times face checks me with a ward and she gets completely annihilated. Game for her is completely nuked right now. She needs the base. She's in a really tough position. You may be wondering, whoa, this Annie's fucking boosted. Why would she do this? Well, maybe a little bit, but the reality is there's a play happening on bot. Her jungler's there, our jungler's there. So she wanted to see if she could like prevent me from roaming. Because if I roam to bot, she's in a position where it's mid gap, you know, because I've got prio and I can translate then and win the fight onto bot. So that's why she warded there. But this is the power of not giving the enemies information, because instead of actually roaming bot, I don't have the info that Rek'Sai is there yet. That's why I don't do that. What happens, and I have no R. So what happens is that she then face checks me, and I now completely take over the lane with this trade. And eventually, because she's so incredibly low, she just used her stun. I can even snag her, but not still kill with it. And that's purely by denying the enemy's vision. Insanely strong translation of leads tool. In this case, I let my wave prio turn it into trading control. So in this next example, I'm going to be playing Victor versus Xerath. Can we control the lane? Absolutely, we're Victor, we're a really strong laner. Now, that means that we're going to buy a control ward and we're going to ask ourselves the question, what's the next neutral objective? Which side of the map do I want to play on? Well, top lane, even though he's farming pretty well, he's feeding a little bit. Bot lane is quite strong and winning. And my jungle as well is currently winning. So I want to place a control ward, but on which side? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to open up through mid. We're going to push out the wave. That's going to give us a now nice warding window. We're going to do it on bot side. Because my Kiana is eventually going to end up onto the position where the next dragon's currently at. And that's where I want my vision up. So you see that I'm now allowed to take this wave insanely, insanely deep. I'm not under any kind of threat. And I'm going to translate this by moving into bot side. And this is the power of control ward. What I do right now is Xerath has got no clue what I'm doing. Enemy bot lane is under threat by me not being onto vision. He doesn't know what I'm doing, and I abuse this vision right here to now get more poke onto him. You see how this denying of the enemy vision, that I have no clue where I'm at, gives me the opportunity to translate my lead into either more poke, more pressure on the map, and they don't know what I'm doing. Now he places his own control ward because I don't really have a lot of vision. My team is on downtime, so I got to be a little bit careful with contesting this ward, because if there's an Udyr showing up, I might just get ran down and die. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not fighting for it. He tries to do the exact same thing. So I'm fighting for my life for this ward. That's how important this ward is. He does the exact same thing. I now got my Kiana that backs me up right now. I even ult for the ward because that's how important I find it to be, especially these control match versus control match matchups. If you have that ward out, you can get a full push and you can translate that into different parts of the map. Unfortunately, Senna comes and I lose it. That's okay. I could have probably defended it a little bit better by being a little bit more aggressive at the beginning. But I now push out the wave, I grab up my item, I ping the dragon location, and I buy myself a new control ward, rinse and repeating the process. Hard pushing the mid lane wave, completely blocking off the bot side, allowing us to get a free dragon. And it's not rocket science what I'm doing. I'm just pushing the damn wave, controlling the side of the map that I want to play on, getting up the push, keeping up the control, and then translating that into neutral objectives, jungle pressure, more lane pressure, or side lane dives. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of people make when it comes to buying control wards is that they don't identify the tempo of their team. So in this situation, I buy the control ward because I can control my lane, I'm ahead, and I want to translate this towards a different part of the map. In this case, towards bot side, because that's the next neutral objective where we eventually want to play on. These grubbies is not important at the moment. Why? Because my Silas is clearing towards bot. So we're going to eventually play on towards bot side. And that means that I want to translate my vision and my lead towards bot side. So I push out the wave, I place a control ward into the bot side bush, and that is going to allow me to instantly get a push onto the next wave. But what we find is that my control ward instantly gets contested by the Naughty. He now sweeps the shit, and it gets completely taken. And it's a really big problem, because I just lost 75 gold, and I gave them 30 gold. So that's just totally free for them. Now, what was the mistake here, right? This is a really common control ward mistake that I see every single player make. And that's why a lot of people think that this item is useless or they don't understand how to use it, because it just gets taken like that. What I do is I place my control ward one wave too early. What I should do is I should push one more wave, then move in together with my trash, then place the control ward, then place deeper vision. And that way we have a bunch of tempo. I can contest the next wave deeper and then prevent the control ward from dying, because we have the tempo to actually defend it. In this case, I can't defend it, and then it's just a really bad ward, because now the enemies have full vision setup, and we just lose all the control that we just had. That's so unfortunate. A lot of gold spent. Now, this is all you need to know about control wards, guys. If you can start controlling these side lane bushes as a mid laner, you're going to be in a position where you're going to take so much control of the map. It's so much easier to snowball your lead. And all you need to do is just use the exact thought process that I had, and you're going to be able to have a much easier time impacting the map. Now, control wards aren't the only thing that are completely misunderstood in the League community. Building champion pools is way, way, way worse. So, if you want to build a perfect champion pool for the upcoming Season 16, check out the video popping up on the screen right there.